first off, thank you so much to everybody that liked, subscribed, watched, asked questions about this whole thing. You know, it kind of makes it all worthwhile, kind of working away in the shed thinking you're the only one that loves these things, and clearly not. There's thousands and thousands of you out there. Anyway, as you probably saw in the little clip, the car does actually move now under its own steam, which is really, that's bound to be the first time in almost 70 years that it's actually moved. So that is a real milestone for where we're going with this, and hopefully we're going to continue. It gives you the motivation to carry on, do the little jobs as necessary, work away on it and get it finished. So following on from the last video, we had a lot of questions about the rear suspension and the quarter elliptical springs. To be honest, I got a few reservations as well. I wasn't absolutely certain that this was going to work. Now that we've actually tried it, it does, but not correctly. The axle actually rotates with the spring back and forward. So what we really need is some kind of locating rods or trailing arms. And so what we're intending to do is to utilise the original spring hanger on the chassis and the original spring perch on the axle and run a trailing arm between the two. Hopefully one of those on either side should alleviate all our rotational issues. One of the jobs that we have got into since the last video is we needed some kind of throttle linkage. Obviously in the 20s they wouldn't have had throttle cables, so I kind of wanted to use rods, linkage, levers. Again, I like the use of my old engine push rods, the Nash push rods. They seem to kind of work quite well, they're about the right diameter. What I didn't have though was the socket end for the throttle pedal, so I thought jump on the lathe, get a piece of brass in there, turn one up and go from there. The problem now of course is I've done that, I don't mind the look of it at all, but what it does mean is I need to do other ones for these two fittings now as well. It's just more time on the lathe, a bit more machining, and the job should be done. Yeah, so I was looking for a throttle pedal. It wasn't obvious what I was going to do, but then I actually found a piece of hood frame from an old Nash, from a vintage Nash, and used part of the framework, straightened it out, bent the angles into the pedal where I wanted it, mounted it onto the top of the firewall there with an aluminium block, and it seems to work quite nicely. I think as previously mentioned, we were making trailing arms for below the leaf spring, which we have done, and we've just used these hind joints on the ends, welded in some fittings into some chrome moly tube and made an arm up, a trailing arm up. We have considered possibly attaching this lower pivot point directly onto the bracket, but the problem with that is it will actually lock the suspension solid. It'll stop the rotation, but what it will also do is mean that it won't move up and down with the car as the suspension should do. So we've made these very short drop arms, or dog bones as they're sometimes called. That's a conventional length one for the Hudson. The only problem with using that is, other than the fact it's going to dangle down under the car, as the suspension goes up and down, it's got a huge amount of travel backwards and forwards. So we've actually made some very short drop arms there. So in theory, although yes, there will still be some suspension rotation, it is also it's going to mean that the suspension can actually travel up and down as well. The intention of this trailing arm or lower link arm was to prevent actual rotation in the axle. It'll allow the axle to move up and down as the suspension would normally, but we're intending to try and prevent some of the rotation and going into the spring. Quick demo of actually what will happen as the suspension is rising and falling. You can see, I'm just going to use the jack for this, but you can see that as the suspension goes up, or down in this case, the arm moves forwards, and conversely, as I lower it, it will move backwards. And the problem was that if we lock that bottom point to the chassis, it locks the entire suspension, so there's no travel or rotation. that was pretty exciting. To be honest, I had no idea what to expect there. Obviously, we're in a bit of a dangerous situation. We've got a garden with a fairly steep slope. We've got no brakes on the car at all. It's not even lightly connected. There's nothing. There's no pedal, no anything. So I had no real expectations other than trying to avoid going through the neighbour's fence, which clearly we did. We avoided that, and it was just great fun. Absolutely excellent. It was a good idea. I've been given a good idea now as to what needs doing, and there are a few jobs, obviously. It's not just a case of getting in, driving in, it's fine. There's work to do now, but it was tremendous. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't wait to go and have a proper go. Hello.
Hello again.
So hopefully next time we catch up, we'll do a proper drive out in the bush. Depends on how things go with the time frame of doing the alterations. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget, like and subscribe.